Thank you very much. First of all, I called to my colleagues here from Barcelona. I was just there last night. We've been there for the last few days. It's outrageous what's happening with the free press there. I don't mean to politicize this, but I have to share this with you because as a journalist, you will share with me the agony. Last night, there were pelting stones at the local radio station. Madrid is in a process of the equivalent of shutting down BBC Scotland. And it's outrageous what's going on. And we're hoping that all this quiets down. I'm personally against independence. I think it's madness. But regardless, there's a line you do not cross, which is freedom of the press. And they're doing this with the local television station and with the radio station. Last night it got quite nasty. And I'm afraid that the old habits of Spaniards are coming out. So it's just a call for you to hear that point of view from me as somebody who's there, who is, on both sides, but outraged at the violations of free speech. Right, let's try to elevate this a bit. So every year I edit this book. This is Innovation in Magazine Media. This we've done for the last 7 years. This one is Innovation in News Media. We've done for the last 20 years. If you don't know what to get for Christmas for your partner, you can buy one. But what we try to do with these books is, through our consultants, we try to puncture hype. And that's what I'm here to do. I'm here to set the scene with a very clear provocation as to where we should be headed as an industry, as digital publishers, and as a journalistic entity, yes? So our motto, what we try to do with all our clients is guide them through a process where we go back to this reality, where good journalism is good business. The Financial Times says about this, The Economist, some of our clients, some of what we do. But to summarize the two books, in one single innovation for 2017 is simply this one. You must migrate from ad revenue to reader revenue. If this year or early next year you're not charging for digital content, you should not be in journalism. Get out. The model we're pursuing is out of kilter, is broken, is bankrupt. People, no matter who comes to our sites, no matter who comes through our digital experience, will have to pay. They must pay, either with their data or with their money. And in many cases, I'm not advocating here to go back to the old days of a hard paywall, but in many cases that data can be worth much more than them just paying for subscription. Yes. So we are advocating that the model has to migrate through reader revenue or reader identification. You must immediately, urgently introduce a data wall or a paywall along the process for you to reestablish your business and make it sustainable. And why? Because we know it, and this is something we keep denying, and many of you are in charge of business models for digital publishing and news in the UK that are still hanging on to the false prophecy that digital advertising will pay the bills. It will not pay the bills. It may pay diminished bills. It may pay for a very reduced operation that will lose you influence and will lose you power or a connection with a society. Display advertising is dying. More chance of getting hit by lightning than readers indeed clicking on those display ads. It really is quite sad what's going on with many of these campaigns. They're just, and when they're clicking through, you'll see some of the click farms that have been filming in China and in Argentina. You'll see who's actually clicking for those ads. In some markets, we have CPM still going up. Programmatic is working, but it is a swan song. And we're seeing it decidedly turning in a direction that is quite concerning if you still are basing your business on a page views model. It's like this, it's a one-legged stool. You're very vulnerable, and indeed is an absurd way of trying to move this business forward. Yes. So where it's growing, which is the perverse thing about this, the digital advertising is growing. It's growing massively globally, but it's growing for these two, for Facebook and Google. And it's become a duopoly globally. And we've seen the Press Gazette starting this campaign. It's happening globally. I'm not here to cast aspersions at Facebook and Google. I believe that indeed there are the great entities that are building the internet, so we shouldn't be Luddites. We should be part of it. But we should use Facebook. We should not be abused by Facebook. And I firmly and strongly believe that the relationship between these two is again out of kilter, and it needs to be redressed. Yeah, and you see it. This is globally the trend in America. These two are taking the digital advertising lion's share, and it continues, whether it's search or whether it's display. For us to continue to try to build the business on this, it's naive. Yes. And unfortunately, this duopoly, we're foolishly fomenting it. We're still succumbing to their charm offensive. I host the Cannes Lions, which is the Oscars of advertising. I've done it for the last 13 years. I'm invited to petit comité meetings with Facebook, and it's extraordinary how important your content is to their strategy. And they've been very good. Google has been very good with its charm offensive, and they've been very constructive as of late to try to build a different relationship. And yet, we are still buying into their thing that, oh, we have the audience, so therefore come to us, use us as a channel. Your site, your destination doesn't matter anymore. We've got the audience. So therefore, you should also give us let us control the data and the pricings and so on. And of course, we've seen lately what I call tokenism. You know, okay, yeah, we'll include subscriptions on Facebook. Yeah, but when you actually dig deep, it's like, oh, yeah, but we'll keep 30%. And the data, yeah? And we can change the terms at any moment, yes? So as we begin this transformation, I think we need to go back to basics and try to come up with some basic principles. And I think this is a very important principle we lost sight of. The money's made where the article is viewed. It's as simple as that. The rest are promises of false profits. Oh, yeah, no. Remember, we were here almost, 6 years ago with YouTube. YouTube said, oh, build channels. And they convinced the BBC and CNN to build channels on YouTube. We have the audience and so on. And of course, the model evolved, and now we have a completely different proposition when it comes to dealing with YouTube. But indeed, they did have the audience, and yet they convinced publishers, and we saw the result. We've succumbed into the same narrative. And this is the principle that we must return to, and this is how we need to rebuild the business. The article is a place, and where it is where you get the data, where you get the relationship, where you get the habit, where you get the brand loyalty, and where you get the money. And again, there's a lot of money to be made, but we're foolishly not getting it. This dynamic, again, we think it's broken, and if you're still trying to build your business based on that, it's not going to really end in a good end of the story. Yes? And we're seeing that we're becoming white label suppliers. You know? Our content is building their platforms. So again, news media built on display advertising is in serious trouble and quite vulnerable. And we're seeing the evidence of this. Mashable layoffs last year, and they're continuing, yes? Laying the entire political unit, the global unit, BuzzFeed, profit warnings. Salon went belly up for different reasons, yes? The Huffington Post, validation, it hardly registers anymore, yes? So there's digital pure players. Oh, kill print, and let's go to digital pure, and we'll find a business model, again, with the proposition we have today. We're seeing the evidence that this model is very weak and leaking in many places. So free is very expensive. In business, again, we return to basic principles. Value is paid for. And we have to value our business with clickbait and commoditized content, yes? Another principle, everything that generates value should generate revenue. And again, the revenue may not come directly. I'm not calling here for everything has to be paid for. Yeah. Again, part of the revenue could come through getting the data for somebody and being able to target native advertising or very clever premium micropayments content to them. Yes. And when something's cheap, someone inevitably is paying the price. And if we continue in this dynamic, we're going to be the ones paying the price. Yeah. And what's making all this even more perverse is that we're now losing money and losing trust, which is incredibly worrying, yes? We reached the apex of second-hand journalism because this need for us to build the traffic, the volume has led us to this, to recycle news, to charlatanism, to analysis with our reporting, to cheap, uninformed opinion. And this is what we're offering. This is the menu that we're churning out every day. And I travel the world transforming newsrooms, and I go to newsrooms, and I'm very concerned when you're there at 11 a.m. and you have a newsroom full of people. I was like, what are they doing here? It's like, oh, no. And then you actually examine what they're writing, and they're saying, they're writing, and he said on Twitter, and he said on Twitter, and he said on Twitter. You stick to the API of Twitter, and it's like, well, what about, soul of your shoe journalism, getting out there, talking to your sources, meeting them face to face, doing your story out there in the field is being lost. Because the pressure of digital is that we must produce as much volume as possible to get those page views, to then get those CPMs and so on, and put it all on Facebook. And so it's voyeurism versus journalism. Noise to news. And you all wanted to create great content, it's obvious, but this has led to a dynamic of clickbait and traffic, because that's what advertisers have wanted up to now. But what's interesting, and this is now changing, yes? Advertisers really are also migrating, if you actually sit down and talk to them, if you go beyond your programmatic dependence and you talk to them, they're also looking for a different business logic. Yeah? So how do we do the migration? First of all, again, back to this principle, they must pay from now on with their data or with their money. Let me take you through the funnel. This we do with some clients, and this is the digital path. I'm sure you're familiar with these funnels, but there you can see where the data wall is introduced, and there you can see where the paywall is introduced. And this is specifically for a client. I've taken out the name, but this is a major magazine in New York. We've been working with them for the last 6 months, and now these people were basically on a dynamic of page views and selling advertising against digital display. And now we've taken them through this. The conversion rates have been very, very interesting. In terms of payment of the paywall people at the bottom, it's already 5%. In terms of data wall, it's very high, it's 20%. And again, they were just last year when we arrived, August 2016, their narrative is like, oh, look at this. They were going to the shareholders, to the board. We've doubled. We now have 20 million unique visitors. We are the leading magazine in New York for this. And now they've lost a lot of that. They have lost a significant amount of that traffic as a result of this new policy. But they've gained so much in relevance and prominence. And of course, I'm sure you can indirectly identify what brand I'm talking about. But that's the journey we've taken them through. And of course, that has meant abandoning a lot of the journalism that they were doing, which was purely, what I've been talking about, charlatanism, a lot of people sitting behind a desk quoting other people on the internet. So some lessons in this transition to a real focus on reader revenue. First of all, people are willing to pay for online content. This has changed dramatically. And for a number of reasons. Some of them have to do with a generational change. So millennials, most of us here, we've been born and raised in an internet that is free. And yet the Y generation and younger people, they're growing up paying for Spotify, for Netflix. Everybody has a Netflix subscription. And also the fake news dynamic is also leading to a lot of people for the first time realizing they need verifiable and real, credible news, so therefore they are subscribing as well. So these two things have come together, and you'll be surprised how, if you have good content, how acceptable people's attitudes are towards paying. Yes, reduced traffic is not catastrophic. I show you that example of that magazine in New York. They did lose, but there's still enough commodity inventory to keep it going. Yes, I'm not saying here when you make this transition to abandon display advertising, but I'm saying that indeed both of them can coexist. But you will use some traffic. Yes, a good benchmark is that 3% of unique visitors will become subscribers, yes? That's if you have a good brand, if you haven't given up your brand and made it disappear and diluted through Facebook. But if you still have people with a habit of coming to your site, to your mobile app, on a regular basis, 3% will convert automatically, yes? And we see, in terms of paying for a subscription, and we're seeing some clients up to 7%, which is quite exciting, yes? The rest, you want to build an entirely different business model. You must keep social media traffic open. Again, I'm not suggesting here abandon these wonderful social media platforms out there, or Google. Be part of it, but don't be abused by it. And in some cases, if you still have paper products as part of your organization, if you have an abandoned paper, charging for online still helps the paper product. Yeah? You can do bundling, and it works quite effectively. And then the big issue, well, then what is the model? Are you advocating here a hard paywall or no? It's a journey. In many cases, you begin with a meter or with a freemium. In some cases, if your brand is strong enough, or if you have some content, if you really own a niche, then you should go for a hard paywall. But even more interesting, now we're seeing a dynamic paywall concept. This has emerged from Sweden the last year. Schibsted is using it, 2 publishers are using it in Norway. And this is like yield software, like EasyJet. So you have a lot of interest in the story, the algorithm kicks in, and then you have to go through one of these filters. Give me your data, give me, you've hit 10 articles or whatever, or indeed this we're charging for today. So it's called dynamic paywall, yeah? And it's working for them quite well in Sweden with some local issues and also with sports news when a lot of people want to know about a specific story. So this is the question of our time. What contents triggers a subscription and what's above it? If you're still in this dynamic, if you're still producing this kind of journalism, you'll never make money out of it. That's it, it's commoditized, it's gone forever. We are no longer the source of breaking news. It's what's below that is where the money is made, yes? And again, when you make these transitions, people say, oh yeah, but this can be done if you're a reputable brand. Not so. Local team, local politics, hobbies, passions, verticals, and so on. We have a client in Germany that has created a hard paywall for the 3rd division football team in Berlin. And they have 20,000 subscribers already. And they just made that freemium area with hard payment for those people because they own that team, like Crystal Palace or something. They own the journalism for that, so they closed it hard and they own that, yes? So this is the key, to be an inch wide but a mile deep. This is the concept. This is owning the 3rd division content for a football team in Berlin. And this is the reverse of the long tail, remember? So the long tail, there was long promise. Well, this is reverse. The more you own of an audience, the more you own of that market share. And this is a good example with the 3rd division football team. And we've done it in Brazil just recently with Petrobras, the leading oil company. And we have a closed experience within O Globo, which is the biggest news site in Brazil. And they're beginning to close these small niches of content, yes? So in a world of digital abundance, you need to be unique. You will then find your scarcity and you will find the money, yes? In the US, this dynamic is strong. Of course, in the UK, we also have many examples of people experimenting with charging with data or with money. But there's still plenty that believe that the other business model will sustain it. This will not sustain you, and reader revenue is essential. So to conclude, what do I then do with my digital ad business? And this is where it gets interesting. We need to move from clicks to clocks. Yeah, clicks to clocks. You still need to keep it going as long as it's there with whatever structure you've got, but you need to shift it to a different selling proposition. And that's selling page views versus time spent. The new methodology is being used, as you know, is CPH, cost per hour, as opposed to cost per thousand. This is being done by the Financial Times here, by The Economist, by many others. You're beginning to sell per time spent, yeah? Because advertisers now, they really are demanding time spent. And also, when you sell time spent, you also are selling a verified reader. We'll talk about this in a moment, but ad fraud, as you know, is reached industrial proportions, is out of control. Many advertisers are being called out, many ad agencies are being called out, because it's really quite serious. Facebook is paying fines and so on. And look, here's one. This is a click farm in China I visited recently. And you want 100,000 followers on Instagram, it's $200 here. Very easy. You want to get 1 million followers on Twitter, no problem. That's $500, I think. And these exist. This one is in Argentina. Yeah, and there are panels and panels, and ad agencies tell them, click on this ad, click on this website, and advertisers are realizing, and of course clients are realizing, that the fraud that's going on with digital display is out of control, and that's going to even make it more urgent for you to migrate to selling time, not selling indeed clicks. Yes? So stop competing for page views, start competing for engagement, proven time spent. One of the formulas that we're using for the equation for engagement, this is what CPH is based on, is this, is the time spent plus the proof of readership, so this is not a bot in China or in Argentina, this is not a click farm, multiplied by the returning frequency, so indeed this person is coming here regularly, and all this divided by your cross-platform unique visitors, so all the social media and everything you have, and that's real engagement. So that is indeed my message. There's much more in my presentation. I'll be happy to share it with you, but that is what I'm here to propose, that you really begin in earnest this migration, because the page views business model, it may be paying the bills now, but it's not sustainable. All the indications are that it's going to become even more out of kilter, is being dominated by Facebook and Google, and the sooner you make this migration, the better. Thank you very much.